Glover said in a recent interview that Swarm was a character study in the Atlanta universe. I found that to be pretty interesting because I feel like Swarm is a reflection on Black girlhood. There's been lots of focus on Dre, the main character of Swarm, not being hypersexualized. But there are some other places that point to Black girlhood. And I feel like the focus of how she was not hypersexualized and not thinking about some of the other aspects of Black girlhood that are represented in Swarm still make Dre hypersexualized. Towards the end, we get a better understanding of, just some of the stigma that Dre and Marissa experienced related to their dynamic. So I remember at the end of, I believe it's episode 6, when Miss Jackson, the foster mother, is sharing more about, Dre when she was younger, and that Mr. Jackson, the foster dad, thought that her and Marissa's relationship was weird. She used the word funny, right? Which, of course, in the Black community is language around being queer, right? But two things are happening at this moment when they're talking about that, but we'll get back to that. Let me share more about the other areas of Black girlhood. We could talk more about how Dre's grief was criminalized. I think that is a huge theme in Black girlhood. I have experienced this, where anger, grief, disappointment, again, are criminalized. It makes me think about Dr. Monique Morris and her work around push out. And so the other thing that was happening in the midst of that kind of conversation with Miss Jackson, the foster mother, and the funny, right, Dre being funny, is this idea too of Black girls and our relationships being policed. Many of our relationships are policed. So as Swarm as the example, right, we saw how Mr. Jackson, how again, their closeness, Dre and Marissa's closeness, was seen as being queer and something that wasn't okay. But then Miss Jackson, she had a different perspective on how she saw Dre and Marissa's relationship, especially just given Dre's background, which ties back into that initial point about Black girls' grief being criminalized. Miss Jackson and Miss Kirby, the foster care worker, were the only two people in the documentary or in Swarm, from what I could tell, that even voiced really empathy and care for Dre. I don't know if I would call Dre and Marissa's relationship loving, just based on the ways that they were showing up, the ways that she showed up for her, in the first episode. I don't know. Is that a good friend? So these have been, just some of the things that I've been thinking about related to the reflections on Black girlhood that are represented in Swarm.